Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom means a greeting that extends to you health, wellness, well-being, nothing broken, nothing missing. So I'm speaking a blessing to you as I greet you today. And Chaverim means friends. So I'm just speaking a greeting to my friends as I begin this little video for you. I have had a lot of people ask me, what is your favorite version of the scriptures that has English and Hebrew both? Is there an interlinear version that's really good or available? What can you suggest that we get on this particular level that we're at in Hebrew? So today I'm going to go through several that I personally have that I have used to various extents. Some of them I've used more than others, and there are reasons for that. So I will rate them. I will look at the font, some of the drawbacks to them, who they're published by, what they would be best used for. Some of them are not necessarily good for reading fluidly, but they might be good for a reference tool. So overall, I will give them a star rating from 1 to 5, and I will begin with the lowest on my list. Doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that there are others that I like better. And by the way, I am not being reimbursed nor am I sponsored by any of these places. They are just the ones that I personally use and have wanted to share that with you. I've had a lot of people that have asked me for my opinion, and that's all that this video is just simply my opinion, my thoughts from the years that I have used the various different scriptures. And I will say that I have changed and used different ones more than others at different time periods. So it just sort of depends on what I'm wanting at that particular time, but there is one that I will go to more than others for reading through the Hebrew scriptures or looking from the Hebrew to the English or something like that. There are different things that I will look for. The first one that I'm going to talk to you about is Sefer HaBritot, which means the book of the covenants, and it's the Hebrew English Bible. The font on this one of my major drawbacks with it, is that it is very small. It is difficult to read, especially for those that are mature readers, older eyes. It's going to be very difficult for you unless you've got very, very good lighting on it or a magnifying glass. And sometimes that's just not pleasant to use. The English version that's here is the New King James Version. It does have the English on the left and the Hebrew on the right, and they are fairly close verse to verse, so you can easily refer from the Hebrew over to the English if you know some Hebrew to be able to figure out what this one particular word may mean that you may not be familiar with. The drawbacks of it, of course, the first one is that it's hard to read. It's hard to see. I do use it sometimes if my lighting is very, very good and I want to have one version where I've got both of my translations right there together. It's not a bulky or a difficult size, hence one of the reasons that it's so small, because they opted for a smaller size of book rather than a larger print, which would have made a bigger book. The other problem with it is that there's no room in the margins for any notes. And I don't mean copious notes with all these things that people are doing now, decorating and artwork and all that. I mean, there's just barely any margin on it, which is another one of the reasons that makes it difficult to read, because there is another one that has a very similar font, but it's much easier to read because they did spacing in the verses and they did spacing between the columns and on the sides that was a much wider spacing. So this one is very difficult to read. It is a hardback. I don't know if it comes in other backings. I'm not sure. And it is put out by the Bible Society in Israel. It was originally done, the English portion was done by Thomas Nelson Publishers. And so that would be something you should be able to locate fairly easily. I know several of my students have this particular version and they've used it for a good while. The second one that I'm going to go into is a name that many of you may be very familiar with because he does do a lot with the Paleo Hebrew. It is Jeff Benner's Mechanical Translation of the Torah. And the font on it is very good. It is nice and large, so hence we have a very large, bulky book that's difficult to handle. One of my major drawbacks with it is I cannot really hold it up because the spine has already broken away from it, and that was broken within the first maybe couple of months, and I didn't use it every day by any means. The readability of it is fair. It is not one of those scriptures that you will pick up for fluid reading in Hebrew or really in English, because the way that his format is, he takes every single word and he translates it from Hebrew into English just immediately right after it. And even though he underlines the English, to put your pieces together is difficult to do. And then at the end of each one of those, he'll put his suggestion of the translation of that verse right under it. So it's right there. You can skip down verse by verse and read that kind in English, but it's not for a good fluid reading in Hebrew. One of the reasons for that is that he breaks down the pieces, of some of them anyway, with the prefixes separated from the suffixes. I was looking for a particular example that I could give to you in this particular page. I'm not seeing some, but anyway, you will find that if you don't know Hebrew, it may be confusing to you. But it is a very literal translation, and that was his goal, was to make it as literal as he could, word for word, so that you could see exactly what the scripture said in Hebrew. But if you don't know a little bit of Hebrew, it'll be very difficult for you to understand, because you won't understand why they worded it that way, or why they put it that way, or what exactly they were, the author was trying to say, what the father was trying to say. And so it will be very difficult. It's basically, I'm not recommending it for fluid reading in Hebrew or really in English. It's easier in English if English is your native language, but it's very difficult. It's very choppy, and you do need to know some Hebrew. So I rated this one a 3-star, like the previous one, for different reasons, as you can tell. The next one is the Israel Bible, and it's put out by Israel 365. The author of it is, or the editor, pardon me, the author is the Father God. The editor is Tuli Whites, and of course this one is just simply the Tanakh, what the Christians would call the Old Testament. And the very first one that I showed you, the Book of the Covenants, Sefer Habritot, sorry, have trouble with that word. It's just tongue twisting. That particular one, the brown one, the first one that I showed you, actually has the New Testament or what we would call the apostolic writings, or the Brit HaChadashah, as well as the Tanakh, which is the Torah, the first 5 books of the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Ketuvim, the writings. And so you will have those 3 portions here in the Israel Bible. It is done by Israel 365, and the font on it is the same as the first one. But as you can see, it's much easier to read, because they spaced the sentences apart one by one, and there's more margin. So it's got a much better readability. However, it is a big, bulky book that is not real handy to sit on your lap and read for pleasure, unless you don't mind heavy books. So that is one of its drawbacks. It's just a bulky book, and it's not got a large font, but it is readable, more so than the first one, because of their nice typeface that they've set it in. So this one I actually rated 3.5 stars, because I do like it better than the other ones that I just showed you. The next one that I want to show you is, I'm going to show you 2 at the same time. One is called the Tanakh, the Stone Edition Tanakh. The other one is called the Stone Edition Chumash. The Chumash is just the first 5 books, the Torah, and the Stone Edition Tanakh, of course, has all of the Hebrew scriptures, the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. And the font in those is a very good size font. It actually has the Hebrew on one page and the English on the other. So it's not right there next to each other exactly, but it is facing pages. And so that makes you able to find the words as well, going from Hebrew to English and English to Hebrew, if you know some Hebrew and how to find them. The translation to the English is the Art Scroll translation, and it includes footnotes in it from the sages. And of course, they are not all the footnotes, but they are the footnotes of the major sages. And so you will, if that is something that you want, that would be something that you would definitely, that would be a version that you would definitely consider. The drawback to it is that it is not interlinear. It is not word by word, and it is large and bulky also. So it's a little bit heavy and difficult to maneuver. It is the Art Scroll series, and it is done by Mesorah Publishing. And so that is another version that you may want to look at. The next one that I want to show you is a 4-volume set that is called the Interlinear Bible. And this is what a lot of people have been waiting to see. It is very easy to handle, maneuver, and so it will have a segment of the Tanakh in each one. And it actually does have, the 4th volume has Greek and English. And this one, being interlinear, has actually the words in Hebrew above its meaning in English. And I can't get it real close for you to see, but it's also got the Strong's number above it. It would be wonderful, it would be absolutely perfect if they had given more care to the vowel pointings in the Hebrew. The Hebrew consonants, the letters, are very clear, very good typeface, very good size. The English is readable, good size. They do a fairly good job of translating word by word, but it does not have the vowel pointings done well. And so if you're just beginning Hebrew, or if you struggle with Hebrew, or you really don't know very much, you just kind of want to be able to use one book to help you go from English to Hebrew and Hebrew to English, this would be very difficult for you, because if you aren't familiar with some of the vowels and the vowel pointings and what they would be in each word, it's difficult to use, because you would have to use another book that would have a good vowel pointing clear in it for you to be able to pronounce the word properly. So it is good for a reference tool to put beside you when you're doing some reading and using Hebrew and English. It's automatically got the Strong's number there above the word, so you can go to your other reference materials and look up a word if you want to do a little bit further in depth. It is not good for fluid reading in Hebrew, like I said, because it does not have the pointings well done. They are sometimes missing, sometimes so blurry you can't read them. Sometimes I have found a few errors in it. I know that that is possible with any translation, but usually the ones that come from the Jewish companies are very, very cautious about any errors in their Hebrew. It is done by J. Green, literal translation. And it is one that you should be able to find fairly easily as well, by Hendrickson Publishers. And again, it is a 4 version. It does have one. The last one is volume 4 with the Greek to English. I don't know Greek, so I can't really give you any feedback on that at all. But this is something that it's a good reference tool if you're wanting a reference. But if you're just wanting one version to read with your Hebrew in it and with your English in it, it is not a good version for you. Even though I gave it 4 stars because I do like it, I like to use it to kind of at a glance see what are the, what is a little bit of what this word means, if it's one I'm not familiar with or that's not used very frequently in the Tanakh. What's the Strong's number, something like that. I use it for specific purposes. Upon occasion, I will use it to read from, but it's not my go-to version. It's not the first one that I choose. And I saved this one for the last. It is my favorite, but it is one that is not a good one for students that do not know much Hebrew at all. It is not a good one for someone who just wants to be able to see what the Hebrew word is with the English word. It is not a good one for that. This one does not have side-by-side English and Hebrew. It does not have word-for-word English and Hebrew. In fact, it has very little English in it at all. And this one is called the Reader's Hebrew Bible. It is put out by Zondervan Publishing, and the font is excellent. Very good size, very readable, very easy to read. The way that this one is set apart that makes it different is at the bottom, it has the footnotes in English. And what the footnotes are is it takes a certain portion of your basic Hebrew words and expects you to know those. It's not going to translate those for you. But the ones that are used less often, it will put a footnote after that one, and it will give you the translation of the root, the three-letter root for that word, what its basic meaning is. So that if you know the Hebrew, you know the parsing of the Hebrew verbs, conjugations, we call them sometimes in other languages, and you know some of your prefixes, some of your articles, prepositions, different things like that, you'll be able to figure out what the word means pretty easily, just by the way that they've got it written with the footnotes. And like I said, the drawback for this one is it is not usable for all people. You will only be able to use this after you've got a fair amount of Hebrew under your belt. If you've done, some studying of some Hebrew, more than just the alphabet, more than just the lettering system. It also has a very poor quality cover. I use mine a lot, and you can see there's a lot of wear and tear. The binding is good. It has stayed to the binding in the book itself. It's a nice feel. It feels like it should be leather, but it's not a good, sturdy cover. Another drawback to it. But that one actually is my favorite one of all the Hebrew versions that I have. And so those are the ones that I personally have. If I come across another one that I like better, I will definitely for sure share it with you. But for right now, those are the ones that I have to go through with you so that you can make your own educated decision. What I would suggest you do is if you find one of the ones of these that you are interested in, that you find it online or in a bookstore, look it over yourself, see what you want to use it for, make some notations from the things that I've mentioned to you here, what things it has and which one might be better for you and which one might not be as good for you. Each one of these would be perfect for a certain type of reader or a certain user or in a certain situation. So you have to determine that as the reader. So I appreciate very much your time and for letting me share with you these versions of scriptures. And I pray that you will be able to find a good version that will work for you in the things that you need. As far as cost for each of these, you'll have to look those up yourself because depending on where you live and how much shipping is, they will all be different. I know my friends in Canada, theirs is much more expensive than mine is here in the States, and some of them have not been able to get them at all. So just be sure that you check on the pricing as well. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope this was helpful to you. If it was helpful to you, let me know below and kind of tell me your thoughts. Tell me what you think. I always hear other people say, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. This is my first one, so I don't really know a whole lot about that, but just feel free to do that as well. Have a wonderful day. Have a good week. Shavua Tov, and I'll see you next time.